Hello, fellow YouTubers. My name is Lee, and I'm here for another movie review. But more accurately, I'm doing a sort of switch on my movie reviews and doing television. Because I wanted to do a post on one of my favorite Netflix series, and quite possibly one of the most underrated of the Marvel Netflix catalog that's come out, The Punisher. I'm going to go through season 1 right now, because I feel in order for me to do the new season, I have to kind of touch on the old season and what made it so good. So, The Punisher appeared in Daredevil season 2, and honestly, even according to reviewers, it was the best part of a very disjointed series where the first half dealt with the Punisher and then dove into a weird hand thing to try to bring them back to this Defender spin-off, which went cataclysmically wrong and probably doomed most of those franchises. But the standout was a great actor known as Jon Bernthal, and if you've ever followed his work, he did, premiered on The Walking Dead. He did 2 seasons as Shane, one of by far the best characters in The Walking Dead, and brought to life amazingly by Berthal's portrayal of Shane. A great contrast to Rick. And here he's no different. They say that actors get a role that is sort of a defining role that is them. They're that character. For the Avengers, you have Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. I mean, when you look at it, could you really picture anyone else who could hit the tones that the characters have? The Punisher is a difficult character because in comic book form he works. He basically ruthlessly kills bad guys. And his moral compass is a lot different than what you see from normal Marvel characters. Even in the extreme versions of these Netflix shows, a lot of times the bad guys are beaten up or injured. I mean, it's a rarity that a hero kills a person. Even in Daredevil, Daredevil's greatest adversary, Kingpin, played brilliantly by Vincent D'Onofrio, is sent to jail. And it's a contrast to the characters, their style of handling things. So, in order to understand, we meet Punisher in season 2 of Daredevil, and it really resonated for me being in the military, because he's a man who came back from war looking to heal, and not but 2 days back, his family is gunned down brutally by a ruthless gang war, which he takes his skills and becomes a one-man army against the crime bosses of New York. And this plays out beautifully across the season, and it's a great foil for Daredevil, because Daredevil tiptoes the line, but as a moral code, he never crosses it, kind of like Batman does, you know. He'll hurt someone, but all in all, he doesn't want to kill him, because the point is that they're no different than the bad guy if they kill him. And it's an excellent thing to play around with. What makes a hero? What makes a vigilante a vigilante? What is the difference between justice and just imposing your own will? Daredevil is fascinating because Matt Murdock nearly beats people, I mean, like half to death. He really gets very, very, very close to that thin line that I think that a lot of us are afraid to cross. You know, and he knows what needs to be done, but sometimes him not being able to do that right thing is the debate of whether or not he could stop certain events. And in most cases, some of it holds true, some of it doesn't. And that's really the dilemma that his character faces in Season 2. Frank Castle is basically a mirror image of him. but with no worries about taking that line too far. He has no problems with killing people. There's a beautiful dialogue, and before you watch Punisher, I would encourage you to watch the second season of Daredevil, because it is quite fantastically acted, and the two leads are phenomenal. But Frank is sort of intrigued by this man in a costume sort of like him, doing what needs to be done, but feels that he is the better method of handling bad guys. And there's great dialogue where he says, you know, you beat up a couple of people and put them in the hospital. But me, when I put someone down, they stay down. And it's just a great contrast to the sort of internal battles that you have as someone who comes back from seeing the things that you've seen. And the worst part about it, as you get to know his character, is that these inner demons were kept at bay by his family. And it's interesting to see a man who's lose everything. What do they have left? And so I'm going to jump right into the Punisher. And basically after the events of Daredevil, he has tracked down everyone that he believes is responsible for his wife and daughter's death. And he kind of just wants to be left alone. He's under an alias called Pete Castiglione. I don't know. It's a weird Italian name. But it's quite close to Frank Castle. And he's working construction. And he sees these guys that are hassling this one guy to do this job with him. And, you know, at the end of it all, they plan on killing this guy. And we see Frank always hangs out at this construction site, and he happens to be there after hours when they're going to do the deed. And because the dude took off his mask during this heist, and they saw his face, and yada, yada, yada. And Frank got to know this kid and kind of his background, and you see that the Punisher, or Frank Castle, has very narrow mind about right and wrong. He's seen the world in gray, but for him, certain things are unforgivable. However, what this kid did apparently was out of necessity, and he understood it, and very quickly dispatches with these people. And you sort of see the struggle in the latter half of the season of him not wanting to go back but being pulled back through events. So let me start with my pros, cons, and then I'll get into the overall. But I gave you a very long overview, and basically the season boils down to him realizing that the people he killed was just the tip of the iceberg. That an old commander that he loathed may have been behind it, and even up to Homeland Security. Now, I normally don't like politically motivated things, but the way they handle politics in this show is very good. They dip their toes in, but they don't swing one way or the other. It's more of a look on is violence justified? What makes it right or wrong to end someone's life? And I think that is an age-old topic that's been debated, and at points you see the brutality that he does, but you realize these are really bad people that he's killing. I mean, horrendously bad people who have used their position of power to escape justice. So when there's no justice, who is the justice? Who is the person to say what they're doing is wrong? And for that, I agree with a lot of views that are presented. I also like the fact that they deal with PTSD and soldiers that come back and can't acclimate into society. And they have a whole storyline on a soldier that Frank's buddy Curtis tries to save, and you know, it doesn't happen. There's also various storylines between Frank meeting up with an old friend, and I don't want to spoil anything in this review, but it's pivotal to the whole entire end of the series. Now, the highlights of this is the acting is phenomenal across the board, but Jon Bernthal as the Punisher is amazing. You can see, now the comic book is very one-dimensional in the fact of how they portray Frank. I mean, they show depth here and there through flashbacks, but really, you're not given an anchor to like this guy. You see him as kind of a vigilante who goes and kills lots of people who are bad, but there's not really a good justification for his motives, which I think adapting this to a show does it justice, because Jon Bernthal makes you really believe that this is a man who has tried to put these demons aside, and the only way for him to exorcise his demons, so to speak, is to take out these bad guys. It's to be caught in a never-ending war. And when I do my Season 2 review, I will touch down on how they really highlight that fact. This is a man who came back damaged and then was damaged further by events at home. And it's really great to see them touch on the psyche and what it would be like. And you really feel for him. I mean, just picture, you've been at a war, you come home, you're saying, that's it, I'm done, and then a day later, you'll get a night with your family, and they're gunned down, they die in front of you, and you're shot in the head, in a coma, wake up and you find out that the people who were responsible got away. The justice system failed. So what do? You take your skills and you exercise your own justice, right? I mean, Frank's kids were 8, 7 years old. His wife, you know, they were just getting ready to start this new life. It was a happy day. And they show you each day he replays this nightmare of his wife and kids being shot constantly by these masked figures and these people he can't put faces to. And it's really horrifying when you think about living in that never-ending hell. And it's enough to make anyone really want to kill themselves, but this man channels that anger to get revenge, and I feel directed to the people who deserve it. Now, I love this show, but in the interest of being an objective viewer and an objective sort of guide into these shows, is that Netflix has a problem with over-padding story. And this is vampant in Marvel. There's like 4 or 5 episodes you could easily cut out of a series, and it would make it more action-packed and a little less laggy. And Punisher, unfortunately, suffers through this for its first few episodes. I think it's about 3 or 4 when it really starts to pick up and he meets Micro. Which, speaking of which, forgive me, I don't know the name of the actor, but the guy who plays Micro is fantastic. And in Daredevil, he had kind of a love / really good way to bounce off his theories of the world in Karen Page, but she's a Daredevil character. So how they neatly make a sort of human side to Frank is this character Micro, who, much like Frank, is being hunted down by this shadow organization, the same organization that was responsible for Frank's family being killed. And so it starts out as a mutual interest in this guy coming home and exposing these people, and Frank wanting to get back to business as usual and be left the hell alone. And it really is great to see these two actors bounce off of each other, because I believe a reviewer described it best than I could, was that it was like watching an old married couple, and each have vastly different views on how to get the job done, but each knows that they need the other, because where Micro is the brains and can hack into stuff and give Frank intel, Frank is the blunt instrument. He's the weapon. He's the one that gets stuff done. And it's funny for them to contrast how much they hate each other's view, but just need each other to succeed. And they build this weird bond with each other of almost like people who have been through a war or a tragedy and survived through it. and they're just trying to get back to their normal state of being. You know, Micro's a family man, and he's trying to get back to his wife and kids who he had to fake his death to keep them safe. And Frank is just trying to put this chapter behind him and see if there's a world where he could be normal. And it's all very, very, very great themes that run parallel. And the dynamics between the characters is excellent. Anyone who knows the comics, there's one villain in particular who survives through Frank's rampages, and it's Jigsaw. As you would have guessed, in a book like Punisher, not very many of the characters live to be an overarching villain. It's not like Spider-Man or Captain America where they arrest the guy and he escapes. Frank kills people brutally. Very brutally kills people. Jigsaw is the only one who has kind of gotten into his psyche and is able to dodge death, and Jigsaw's name is Billy Russo. So in this one, they cleverly made that bond stronger, because in the comics, he was a lowlife that Frank threw in a glass grinder, and it messed up his face, and he's got scars all over his body that, you guessed it, look like a jigsaw puzzle. So he adopted that name and has been Frank's villain of choice throughout numerous issues. In this one, they were best friends, and I don't want to ruin it, but it's more personal, and I like that they put the personal touch on there, because villains can seem very generic, mustache twirling, mahaha, I'm going to do this, this, and this. But to have a person you served with, people who you took a shot for, or they took a shot for you, a brother who knew your family betray you, is quite possibly one of the most just earth-shattering things that you can have in a show. I mean, it really brings a dynamic to how painful a revelation like that could be. And it's all handled very well. And it makes the final acts of the show have so much more impact, because you're saying, my goodness, you know, I might not agree with the level of violence that this guy takes pride in doing to all these, you know, generic soldier types, but he deserves it. Now, things that would bother people: one, this show is gratuitously violent. I mean, Game of Thrones level violence. There's lots of language. But I don't believe in this one a lot of nudity or things like that, but it is very, very violent show. Pretty much from beginning to end. Even the episodes that are laggy, there's always like a scene of some kind of violence, and especially the last 3 episodes. One, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you will remember quite a grotesque scene in that show done to Oberyn when he fought the Mountain. And if you know what episode I'm talking about, then you know what the Mountain does to him. And pretty much they recreate this in painstakingly detail. I mean, there is a lot of very up-close fighting, and Frank is brutally efficient. I love his character, too, because he's not the type who walks in and just wounds people. I mean, you see him shoot someone in the leg and then he'll shoot him in the head. I mean, it's very much to military training. He does not leave anybody alive. He does not leave anything to chance, and very few times they get to drop on him, but there's an element of danger with how many people he takes on single-handedly. And it makes for some compelling stuff. A few battles that stand out for me was the last one in episode 13 is quite possibly one of the most horrendous scenes I've seen in a show done to a person, just for the sheer force and brutality. And not only that, but the emotions that the actors play off of each other makes that scene really gritty and raw. I mean, it's quite possibly one of the most graphically violent things I've seen done to a person that lived through it. There's a particular scene where he uses a trap, and takes someone's head and throws it into a crowd, and it's got a grenade in it. And I mean, it's very, it's weird because it's tastefully done, because it invokes a reaction that most people would have. All of these soldiers see, you know, this head roll past them, and they all stop and stare, because what would you do? It's a human reaction. I mean, someone just threw a head down a hallway. I mean, and it's really clever how he lays his traps for these unsuspecting people that dare face him. Another standout episode is the one where their hub is under siege. I mean, there's the back half of the show basically makes it worth watching. From episode, I'd say 6 through 13 is where it really picks up. And that's about midway through the season. So I know there's a lot of people who don't like a lot of exposition and things like that. But this could have been a very one-dimensional show with him just coming in, shooting up stuff. You don't understand the motivations. But this show tackles a lot of different things. And it asks questions like, is it okay to kill someone? Where is he judge, jury, and executioner and right in doing what he does? Is there a way to justify doing horrendous things for the greater good, such in the case of the CIA and their story arc? I mean, does it go from doing what's right for people to blatantly doing what's in your own self-interest? I mean, a lot of these get explored in great detail. And I think it's a really great show, worth giving a check out. But keep in mind, you're going to have to get past at least 2 or 3 episodes for it to really kick off. But once it does, it holds on to you and it doesn't let go. It is quite possibly one of the most enjoyable 13 hours I've spent on a show, and I'd highly recommend it for anyone. So, if you like this review, please click that like button, hit the subscribe. I've got 22 viewers. I'm looking to up that. So tell your friends, family, and anyone who's interested in getting the best possible in-depth review that I can give. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.